To be honest, like up until then, I felt like I was a bit of an odd duck. Like I was out there doing it, like work where I would go and be in the water management managers meeting. And I made so many mistakes in doing that. Unfortunately, I think I was a student and people were like, oh, you're fine. Like you care. So I'm going to give you a pass. And one thing that I really do hope that like by having a community that is front and center at AGU, it can really provide people that context so we don't have to go and make those same mistakes.
I'm Hyun, pronounced Hyun. I'm here with a few of our AGU Science and Society section executive committee members, and we thought it'd be helpful for AGU members, fall meeting participants, and other practitioners to know more about our section and the science and society community we're building at AGU and beyond.
Hi, I'm Julie, and I use she, her pronouns. And in my day job, I'm the research director at the Aspen Global Change Institute, and I'm a hydrologist by training. In my role at AGU, I am the Science and Society president. All right, let's go to Kevin.
I'm Kevin Reed. I use the he, him pronouns, and I am a faculty member at Stony Brook University. At AGU, I am the Science and Society president-elect. And I will turn it over to Kripa.
Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everyone. I'm Kripa Jagannathan. I'm a research scientist at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. At AGU Science and Society section, I am a lead for a track that we've developed within the section, and this track focuses on social and behavioral sciences. And I will popcorn it to Kate Simmons.
Hey everybody, I'm Kate Simmons. I am the science director at Nurture Nature Center. A lot of my work also merges with what we do in the Science and Society section, which I am the track lead for art and science.
So I wanted to start with Julie and ask you about the history of the Science and Society section.
It was formerly known as the Societal Impacts and Policy Sciences Focus Group, and we recently renamed ourselves and reimagined our mission and vision. In the strategic plan in 2010, science and society was one of the 4 outcome-oriented goals of the strategic plan, which really motivated, I think, the development of innovative efforts like the Thriving Earth Exchange and the GeoHealth section, and some efforts in sharing science. And we decided to survey our members to see how we could support and serve the section's growing needs. And so the survey really showed us like who was in the section. There were people doing research, people doing practice. There was a lot of communication, a lot of art, a lot of policy, a lot of governance. In other words, many perspectives that are critical to transitioning our science to solutions are already very much a part of AGU, but a lot of folks were working at the margins and only loosely connected. And so the goal of Science and Society is to bring those connections together and increase that work. And that's what the survey said. And through that, we created the tracks, and our executive committee is growing, and we're bringing in people with track expertise, but also people who are helping with plan the meeting, helping with awards, helping with social media, and we're just growing. This is really exciting.
At that time, everybody was like, but how do we better communicate our science to policymakers? And several of us were like, well, there is a wealth of decades of other kinds of participatory research or transdisciplinary research that have worked with communities on a daily basis, and they are systematic, rigorous disciplines just like any other. And so let's institutionalize them and show that AGU, where we are trying to solve today's problems, also sees them as an institution, as a specific discipline with a history, with rigor, with different epistemologies.
The Science and Society section is very focused on the people who is a scientist, who is an expert. And I think from the outside, AGU can seem like a space for earth and space scientists in a very narrow sense of academics and researchers. But I think in the Science and Society section, we're trying to expand that view and who are experts, who are scientists.
over time, AGU has really evolved, like most organizations over the last 100 years, and part of that evolution has of course, started to include more and more people that not only consider themselves, geoscientists necessarily, but use the information that geoscientists may create, or in a lot of cases, more and more, work directly with geoscientists in their communities or in their industry. And therefore, their inclusion at AGU has become a more and more common thing. And so naturally, Science and Society section is a great, what I've used the phrase before, gateway for non-AGU scientists, practitioners, and experts, and community members and thought leaders to get involved in AGU as part of the membership.
I think Science and Society is a great section in terms of building a community of people that are scientists, practitioners, and people who are thinking about how science is embedded in, let's say, policy, in funding, in all these different aspects that we think are outside of science, but actually science is actually embedded in these other social and financial systems that we also need to consider. So bringing in all these people helps us give a broader look at things like our, today's main mega challenges like climate.
I'm curious to hear from Kate's perspective, what the artists see in our section.
Yeah, the artists are really, really passionate about a lot of the topics that we research and the work that we do, and wanting to be able to share that with broader audiences. So for instance, there's one artist that I've worked really closely with who does a lot of work around climate change. And so she actually goes out in the field with AGU scientists and asks questions about what they're doing and tries to document. And basically she says her job is to bear witness so that she can communicate this to the rest of the world and really make it seem personal and relevant to society at large.
For one of these art programs, somebody contacted me as well and asked me if we would have dinner, where the artists were putting together a dance piece on coastal shorelines and the climate impacts there. They asked me about myself. Why did I choose this topic? What brought me here? What are, how do I deal with the day-to-day emotions of, working in a space where I keep having to see about disaster after disaster? To me, that was like a very scientific exercise of pulling out, like, what are those behavioral, cultural perspectives that we come in with that allow us to be, agents of change. And that really is the biggest research question if you think about it in that way. And so I feel like the artists pull us researchers outside of our comfort zone to start thinking of, solution-driven questions in a very different way.
Scientists are humans too, right? And so
Right.
I think just to be blunt with it, right? Which means that, a lot of what our section can do is also have those discussions, those practical discussions of what it means to be a scientist. What are the challenges when in social settings, or what are the challenges in interacting with practitioners or others outside your domain? And what are the communication tools that you can use? Or what is the state of the art science about communication that you can learn from to improve your interactions?
Kripa, I was wondering if you had any example of the impact that being a part of AGU, being a part of the Science and Society section has had on you and your professional development and growth.
I want to say it was 2016 or so, with my first AGU Sciences to Action session. I don't know, Julie, if you were a part of it. It was one of those sections where we had communicators, we had people from all the public utilities, we had NGOs and justice or agencies, and many researchers. Sure, Kevin was in there too somewhere. It was a 1-hour session, but we spent an extra half hour in that same room, cutting into all of our lunch times. And at AGU, Chris, lunch is very important because you're running from session to session with no fuel at all. And suddenly you have to give a presentation. But there were these group of people that were engaging in critical conversations on how we can bring climate services to be actionable right now. everybody was in the table, from local governments to public utilities to justice agencies, and everybody chose to spend that time brainstorming. And I also saw people who were like not doing the actual sciences who were as rigorous as geoscientists. And so for me, the notion of who a scientist is, what is expertise, completely changed.
You know, from my experience, a lot of these type of exercises where you're interacting with, you know, even in a professional setting still, but outside of your comfort zone, right? That, you know, it is sometimes stressful, and it brings back those, what I call grad school nerves, you know, right? You know, going to your first AGU meeting and sitting in, you know, around all these people you've read papers by or you've seen present. It's a little nerve wracking sometimes, but that's because it's because it's forcing you to think about your research and your work in a different way, which I think will only often also has this positive feedback actually onto your own work.
So speaking of graduate school days, like I think kind of back to like, I love science, but I really wanted to do science that had kind of a real world decision-making element to problem solving. And through the connections that I made at AGU, I came to realize there were lots of people who were doing a lot of work on this engaged science, this making the science more relevant to decision makers and communities. And to be honest, like up until then, I felt like I was a bit of an odd duck. Like I was out there doing it, like work where I would go and be in the water managers meeting. And I made so many mistakes in doing that. Unfortunately, I think I was a student and people were like, oh, you're fine. Like you care, so I'm going to give you a pass. But after meeting folks and learning all of the stuff that's out there on how to best practices or ways of going about doing this work better, I'm a little embarrassed. I made those classic blunders. And one thing that I really do hope that, like, by having a community that is front and center at AGU, it can really provide people that context so we don't have to go and make those same mistakes. And I think this is increasingly important as more and more people are engaging. Like, we don't want to overburden the people we aim to serve. And I don't think too many water managers would tolerate like 5 people coming in and making the same mistakes I made. So if we can provide those resources and to help us to all do engaged science better, I think that's one of the goals that all of us on this call share, and a goal for the community that is growing in science and society.
I'm an odd duck too, and it's lovely to have found a place where you don't feel like an odd duck anymore. But I was always had a foot in both science and art. And then I went to grad school and to postdoc doing hard science, remote sensing, but not really seeing that as a place for me because I wasn't making an impact like I wanted. And so I really value the Science and Society section because it says there is science beyond just the ivory towers, just beyond, you know, pure academia. There is value to the other work that we're doing. And so we're pulling in a much more diverse range of people who are doing critical work, who are leveraging off of what those academic scientists are doing. I'm not trying to paint anyone as bad, but just that there is a place for everybody and it's all needed. And if we want to move forward with a better future where science is serving society, it's valued by society, which is really critical right now with the conversations we're having nationally and globally. Science really needs to be able to be valued and seen for the benefit that it has. And that's on us. It's our job to be able to communicate that so that people can understand it. And so I'm an odd duck, but found a place. I'm happy about it.
We can all be all odd ducks together. A flock of odd ducks.
Well, any final either tips or encouragements?
My only tips would be, at the upcoming fall meeting and upcoming meetings in the future, look for Science and Society sections, SY, right? So There's more and more of them. It's growing. There's a lot of opportunities for panel discussions, as well as sessions that are focused on, the science of communication, social and behavioral sciences, all of our tracks. And a lot of these sessions are proposed by our membership, and in some cases, AGU members that aren't actually part of Science and Society, that are starting to get their toes wet in these areas, right? Maybe joining us as odd ducks. But this is one of the easiest ways to get involved and to see what we're doing. But there's plenty of other ways to check out our website for other ways to get involved and other opportunities throughout the year.
Well, thank you, everybody. You can look up our website at connect.agu.org/science and society, especially to learn how to join and participate in the section. Also, look up our new Twitter at AGU Sci Society. All right, thank you, everybody.
Come join us, we're fun.
We assure you we're fun.